Hey guys, Dr. Dex here. Today I'm going to talk to you about 5 mistakes that I've made that I'll never make again. So if you like this video, don't forget to click the subscribe button, and thanks for coming to our channel. All right, my first mistake I've made, and I've made it quite often, was not laying out my fasteners properly when I'm installing a board, and I just go in and all of a sudden I'm putting in fasteners and they're like 10 inches apart, 12 inches apart, 14 inches apart. So having a proper screw layout is something that I've learned that is really important in building for that finished look that you're going for at the end of the project. So I was doing a screw layout. I put the fasteners in the wrong place and I went to install the board. Client comes out, looks up and says, "Hey, you do great work. I don't mean to complain, but all the screws are equal except for right here. They're like scrunched." And he said, "I think that's gonna bother me for as long as I own this deck." So we ended up taking that fascia board down, tossing it, and relaying out the board with the proper layout, and he was happy. If you realize you're messing up, if you can't conceal it somehow with Cortex or something like that, in my opinion, it's just better to take it down and start over. But that could cost you $100. So always taking the proper time to do the proper layout is gonna really help you screw placement. All right, second mistake that I've made that I'll try to never do again is using the proper color decking. I had a client that really wanted this one color, so we went ahead and ordered it. We installed about half the deck, and she came home and she looked down, she said, "This is pink. I hate it." And I looked at her, I was like, "This is a color you chose." She goes, I can't accept this. This is unacceptable." So she paid us to pull that board up, and we used it on the side deck around the corner of the house where she didn't have to look at it, near the garage. And then we laid down new decking in a completely different color, and she was totally happy with it. And so I always verify in contract what color decking we're using. The color that we laid down was like a light gray color, but it had kind of a pinkish hue to it, at least with all the trees and the way the shadows. I don't know, it was kind of bizarre. It was more pink to her though than it was to us. And then she chose a walnut color for us to install, like a darker brown tone instead. Another thing I've done in the past that probably I'll try to avoid in the future was the elevation of beams. We had cut all the posts to height, and this is a second story deck, and we put the beams in, and then we were gonna put the joists on top, and the client came home and said, "Hey, these beams are too low. I wanted the beams flush with the joists." And I'm like, "Are you sure?" So I went back on the plans and he was correct. I had actually gotten into framing mode where we were gonna put the joist on top of the beam, and it was supposed to be flush like this. So I had to go buy all new posts, recut all the posts, which wasn't that big a deal. It's just I had 8 posts that I couldn't use that day. I had to take them all down, and we just cut them up and use them for blocking or whatever. And then we had to reset all the beams at the proper height. So we had to raise the entire deck before we could finish the joist. So a good idea is always review your plans and make sure you're putting your beams at the proper height. One time I was doing a paver patio for a client, and they were having a hard time choosing what type of paver they wanted. So it got a little convoluted, and I did write it down. I ordered the pavers, I went and picked them up, I delivered them all to the patio. And as I'm delivering the last set with a Bobcat, the client comes out and says, "These are the wrong pavers." And my heart sank. And we went through the paperwork, we went through the catalog, and it didn't matter if I was right or wrong on that one. He didn't want the ones I brought. So I had to move them all back up. It was a long haul, and I had to move them all back up the hill. And every time I took a trip up and down the hill, it was sloughing a little bit of dirt. It was winter time, it was raining, and I was losing an inch or two of dirt every time I came through, to where I probably sloughed off a couple feet of dirt on this hill. Well, I exposed his fiber optic phone line, and then by driving on it, severed it. And then they had to call the phone company, and they had to come out and splice it. And he was really upset with me for doing that. But all I was doing was driving back and forth. I was trying to replace the dirt, but it was getting really mucky, moving so many pavers back and forth. So that was a costly mistake. I had to take all those back, return them, and then bring the other ones back and re-deliver them. So that ended up costing me. We ended up building up the dirt and putting plywood down to try to keep this from sloughing off. That was probably one of the worst ones I've done. where I made a huge mistake that I'll try to never make again. In the future, if I'm starting to slough a lot of dirt while I'm moving things, I definitely would use slack tracks nowadays. I have a nice set of those, and that would help keep me from sliding down the hill and shoving dirt off out of the way. And then if I had to, I would bring in some gravel or some hay or something like that to build up the area, keep it from getting wet, and then build up some more dirt or gravel if I had to keep the pathway from sliding down. And don't use your thumb as a push stick. I'll never do this again. I was ripping some thin materials on a table saw, and I do this quite often. And at the time, I didn't have a nice outfeed table. I didn't have my cut hub. I just had some sawhorses and a table saw stand and one of those rollers, right? And I was ripping this piece of material on the saw. Here's the blade, here's my thumb, here's the fence. I had my hand around the fence. The piece of material starts chattering really bad, and it's bouncing up and down on top of this roller, and I was pushing it through, and it went 1, 2, bam, like that, and it just drew my thumb right into the blade. I just said, oh, I pulled back, I went like this, and blood's just instantly coming out and just running down my arm like this. So I wrap it up in a clean towel. We go to one of the emergency clinics that is local to the city we're working in. They took one look at my thumb and said, nope, go to the hospital. So I had to, they wrapped it back up, ran down to the hospital, and 4 hours later, I had like 32 stitches in my thumb or whatever. It was a ridiculous amount. And it took a while for that one to heal. I still have full feeling in it. I didn't lose my nail or anything like that. It is a little bit different shape, and it does peel quite often. So there's always that reminder, which is a good reminder to always use a push stick. Always use a push stick. And if you're in the saw guide plate of the saw, don't put your fingers anywhere near that. Just use a push stick. They're usually attached right to the side of your fence, guys. So those are 5 mistakes that I'll try to avoid for the rest of my career. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when we're putting out new content. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.